Yeah, the red splash in Dustin Mitchell's list here looks like for a copy of Turnburn, a copy of Keranos, and a couple Is It Charms in the main deck, plus some sideboard cards.
I have been a little bit surprised not to see red splashes more often in these blue-white decks. Keranos does seem very powerful. Turnburn, Is It Charm, Rouse Eric, but that's just a personal favorite card of mine. But I have often been surprised not to see more red splashes in the deck. Not heavy ones, just small ones, as those cards are pretty powerful in certain matchups.
Yeah, having access to Anger of the Gods in the sideboard is especially good. Very few decks get to access that card.
Yeah. This will be 3 mana for Mitchell. See what he's going to cast. It's going to be a copy of Banishing Light to go after that Bident of Thassa. You can see Merriam's hand. He's trying to represent quite a bit of strength here, but we know, just like you all do at home, there are 4 islands over there for Ross.
Appears as though he's flooded out quite badly here.
Just a touch. Just a touch.
Well, Dustin is showing respect for Ross's positioning here. He did not cast a Jace, which he could have easily slammed in that empty board.
Merriam going to fire up Mutavault. He's going to try to attack again here for 2. We'll see if Mitchell has a removal spell. If he has one, he doesn't look like he has any interest in casting it. Merriam will play an island, pass the turn back again with 4 cards in hand. And now this is where, you know, Magic becomes a very interesting game. It would be so easy for Dustin, had he had the information, to just say, I'll cast whatever I want to. But he doesn't have that information, so now he has to actually play his spells in a certain order, fearful of Merriam's counterspells, which right now he doesn't have.
Well, if Ross wasn't willing to fight over the Banishing Light and not willing to fight over the Jace, to me that's the signal that there's something wrong with his hand.
Okay.
Because what's he saving his counterspell for, if not that?
Gonna tick this down. You're gonna see 2 copies of Jace and an island that Merriam's gonna have to split up here.
These are the brutal Jaces where it's, you know, you have to give your opponent Jace plus land, which is pretty rough because you cannot give them 2 Jaces.
No, 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 you cannot.
But Dustin may want Jace plus land more than 2 Jaces at this stage.
Absolutely. Dustin going to play that island that he found off of Jace before passing the turn back over to Merriam. Merriam will draw a card. It's a copy of Cyclonic Rift. Not the worst card to find in this situation. Mutavault's going to get fired up. We're going to go after Jace. We'll see if Mitchell does have a removal spell. He does not. So there goes the Jace. Merriam going to play a land before passing the turn back. That Rift is going to be mighty important, I believe.
If the board builds up, it does give Ross a shot. Unfortunately, the board just isn't that advanced right now. It is just that Banishing Light holding down that Bident.
Mitchell going to play Temple of Epiphany. Does scry. And now, going to change the way he taps mana, I believe, for a follow-up Jace. So there is that. Merriam says that's fine. This Jace will start at 4. We'll see where it's going to go. It's going to go down. So we'll take a look at 3 cards. Keranos is 1. Temple of Epiphany is 2. And Mutavault is number 3. Merriam says, the God of Storms versus. And Dustin says, I will take my win condition. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Dustin's list, not really any interest in fulfilling the devotion requirement for Keranos. This is just closer to an enchantment than anything else.
Merriam, I believe, drew a negate for the turn. So he will play an island and he will fire up Mutavault to take down Jace. Ross has to be, I think, pretty happy with, I mean, obviously he's flooding out pretty badly here, but all things considered, you know, he's doing okay right now. It could be a lot worse.
Given the circumstances, things are fine. If Dustin was just tapping out for his stuff, Ross would probably get buried here. But since Dustin respects the possibility of a counterspell enough, Ross is getting some time to draw some more threats.
Yeah, he's getting time to draw into counterspells.
Yeah.
That's the big thing here. Dustin did play a Temple and scryed, and now he's going to cast a Keranos. So he's going to need 1 more mana to cast that because there was a scry land that did come into play. So we will stop that really quickly and make sure he does pay the appropriate amount of mana. But now we're going to have a Cyclonic Rift here. So now there is a copy of Dissolve. That is negate, and this is, yeah, we're going to have to stop this game, I believe.
Yeah.
Hopefully we catch us in time.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of mana that's been used here is now significant.
Okay, so want to know the exact problem that took place here. Keranos was underpaid for by 1, and this allows, so this he needed additional mana to actually cast the Keranos, and then as a result, he's able to play the 2 counterspells that turn because he played a Temple to start his turn, so he didn't pay enough mana for his Keranos.
Yeah, there was a scry there. I believe it was a Temple of Epiphany.
Yep.
And you see the 5 lands set aside, but only 4 of those were available.
Correct. And that has a huge impact on this turn, as you can tell now, since Dustin's able to use all of his mana. So hopefully we can get this backed up here because this should not have taken place. And this is definitely a huge turning point in this game.
It's possible we're in, too much has gone by,
Yep.
too much information has been revealed land.
And one could say a lot has been revealed.
Yeah, this is significant.
You think this is significant info for them to have?
Negate Cyclonic Crit versus Dissolve Counterflux?
Yeah.
Is this pertinent information? I don't know. It feels significant to me.
You tell me. You be the judge. So you said the red splash here in Dustin's deck. We've got a Turn and Burn. Obviously, we have Counterflux, Keranos as well.
Yes. As far as main deck cards go, it's a Firemind's Foresight, a Keranos, a Turn Burn, and 2 copies of Izzet-Charm. Those are the only cards in the main deck.
Okay.
The big incentive in my mind for the red splash in these blue-white-red lists is Anger of the Gods.
Okay.
It's a card that doesn't see a lot of play. It's not on people's radars all the time. I know when it gets cast against me, my reaction is often like, oh, I forgot that was even a card that exists in the format.
It doesn't get that much play in Standard.
Yeah, exactly. And alongside Archangel of Thune or Nyxfleece Ram, that pairing is so good.
Yeah.
I mean, you play Nyxfleece Ram, it forces them to overextend. You can get the same play pattern a little bit with Supreme Verdict, but then you lose your Ram. Yeah. With Nyxfleece Ram and Anger of Gods, your opponent has to keep deploying smaller creatures, and then Anger of the Gods is game over.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. The red splash, I've thought about a lot in this deck. This burn-based removal and Anger of the Gods, the stuff that you talk about is really powerful, except against, I think, one card, which is Desecration Demon.
Yeah.
That's where you end up having like a pretty healthy weakness. Your Izzet-Charms, your Turn Burn can take care of it, but that costs a lot, obviously. Anger of the Gods is obviously not going to get the job done. So I think that's actually maybe why people don't splash red more often in this deck is because you have a real softness to Desecration Demon exactly.
Well, I think you can shore that up depending on what cards you want to play with. You have still the same healthy mix of blue-white control cards.
Sure.
So you could be playing Celestial Flare in your main deck if that was a concern of yours.
Sure.
You still have Detention Sphere and Supreme Verdict and so forth. To me, the biggest problem with the red splash, I feel like you're behind substantially in the control matchups.
Okay.
If you're going to splash a color, black gives you access to Thoughtseize, obviously, and that's just Ashiok, Duress.
Yeah.
These are just the best tools for control matchups. The red cards really are not helping you there. Izzet-Charm is okay, but not spectacular. Yep. Counterflux is good, but not as good as Thoughtseize or Duress.
Sure.
Most of the time. So I think the fact that you give up costs in the control mirror is the reason most people stay away from the red splash.
Yeah, I know Sean McLaren actually tried the red splash at the Pro Tour Born of the Gods champion. He wrote about that in his report this week on Star City, basically saying, I thought the red splash was the place to go. It was a very small one, like for Keranos, and that's basically it. And he just said it didn't work out the way that I wanted to. The black splash would have been a much better place to be. So, or just playing blue-white control just straight up, which is exactly what Fluck did to win the Pro Tour. So, it can be kind of interesting to see exactly how the Revelation decks do go. I wouldn't be surprised if people just did copy, Fluck's version of the deck. It looked very, very good watching him play.
That's the other thing. One, there's so many aggressive decks in the format, and there's a spectrum from red aggro list to black aggro list to burn to Jund monsters, which is not really an aggro list, but it's on the more aggressive end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
There is something to be said for just having a lot of islands and plains in your list and casting things on time.
Lands coming play untapped is very valuable.
Yeah.
And not taking damage to do so.
Yeah, that's it's an unspoken upside of playing just the 2-color builds there. But in certain matchups, like the red list that you saw, members of Team Channel Fireball and so forth, and Jeremy Desani play as well, just casting your spells on time and not taking damage off your lands, that's the most important thing in the matchup.
Super important.
Matters more even than the spells you're casting in many games.
Yeah. Looks like a head judge is on the way to try to get this situation resolved. Of course, when we do have something for you, we'll be joining the match and finishing it up and figuring out exactly what the ruling is, of course. You do talk about Jeremy Desani getting 9th place on Breakers, Player of the Year on the professional circuit this year. Again, congratulations to him on a fantastic year of playing Magic. But he played Rabble Red. We watched Tom Ross last weekend play Rabble Red. Tom put together an insane article about everything you need to know about Rabble Red. If you guys haven't seen that, definitely check that out on Star City Games on the Select side. But these red strategies that Team Channel Fireball played and then Team Revolution played, you know, a lot of talk about those decks, but they didn't put up, you know, one of those top-level finishes. None of them in the top 8, one just outside in 9th place on Breakers, though. So how do we feel about those decks maybe moving forward?
I think it's potent, and the Rabble Master is definitely a huge upgrade for a red aggressive list. A card that I underestimated for sure. And if Jeremy Desani doesn't miss the top 8 on Breakers, we may have a very different tournament and a very different appreciation for how good those lists are.
Yeah.
I think it's a legitimate contender, and the Rabble Master specifically a large upgrade for that style of deck.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Again, when professional teams come to that conclusion that it's appropriate to play a red deck, they must feel very strongly about either that deck or that deck's positioning.
Yeah.
And those red decks, you know, if people ignore them, they are very, very powerful. They're very quick, and they can kill you fast.
Well, that's the other thing, too, is how much respect are other teams at the Pro Tour going to give for this sort of strategy?
Yep.
Are they going to be shaving out sideboard slots to add the last card they feel they need for the mono black or the blue-white control matchup, decks they know are going to be there in large numbers?
Yep.
You know, when I was playing Boros at the Block Pro Tour, I felt that many of my opponents just did not have a sideboard for the matchup.
Yeah.
That so much of their sideboard was dedicated to beating either Esperless or Voice of Resurgence.
Yep.
And just attacking with 2/1s was not something that people had a lot of respect for at that tournament. The Pro Tours, you know, there's a sort of this weird guessing game of how good is the deck perceived to be, and if it's perceived to be low, well, that gives you an incentive to play it. But if people think that that's going on, then maybe you should err on the side of having more hate for the matchup, et cetera, et cetera. It's this interesting sort of cat and mouse game about how much hate you're supposed to have in your sideboard.
We're back to the match. The ruling here is what we thought it would be, which is too much has happened to back the game up. The state is irreversible, so here we are. There's a Coronis in play. It's going to be an attack here for 2 from Merriam to Mitchell. Down to 11 we go. Looks like Ross is drawn. Well, he's still got 2 lands in his hand. Not sure what the new card is. It's Mighty Judge's Familiar. You're a little late to the party, my friend.
Yeah. Not ideal at this stage. Facing down now an active Karanos.
And Karanos trigger will go on the stack. Now, this is an interesting card, as we do reveal an Elspeth, sure. So 3 damage is going to be dealt to something now. And it's going to fire away at that Judge's Familiar. Elspeth will go to the grip.
And Dustin just trying to keep the board clean and allow Karanos to do its thing.
It's not time for this card just yet, but I think once maybe Return to Ravnica rotates out and we're working with a smaller card pool, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see this card dominate.
I think this is one of the more powerful, just generic win conditions in the format. Once this is in play on an uncontested or stable board, the person controlling it is likely to win. So will we see 4x Karanos? Probably not, but I do think that it'll be a 1 or 2 of in a variety of control lists.
And with no interest on turning it on.
Yeah, just if you can turn it on, great, but I don't think that's going to be the point.
Elspeth with 3 soldiers has shown up to the party here. Merriam's at a pretty healthy 24, but for how long is the question, is all he can do is draw and pass the turn back. All he's got is Mutavault. You can see all the islands in play, 11 of them, as there's a Temple of Enlightenment, and now you get to draw a card for the turn. Of course, with Gyarados, when you do reveal a land, you actually get to draw that card, and then you get to take your draw step for the actual turn. So it's all upside, no matter what you reveal, as the top card does go to the bottom.
Yeah, the spot where you have Karanos in play, you're probably more in the market for spells. And you get a bolt every time that happens, and if you get a land, you get another shot at it.
Mutavault's going to block one of those soldier tokens. Merriam's going to go down to 22. Elspeth, of course, going to tick up. 3 more soldier tokens are coming here from Mitchell. And he just does pass the turn back here. Not a lot of action over there in Dustin's hand, but he doesn't need anything in his hand. He's got what he needs on the board.
Yeah, we're kind of hitting the point of no return here for Ross. Just getting overpowered.
Nightfell Spectre here from Merriam, hoping that Mitchell does not reveal a spell, so his flyer can stay in play. However, I'm afraid I've got some bad news. The Supreme Verdict is going to take that down, and Mitchell will have a Supreme Verdict in reserve.
Yeah, exactly.
Just in case.
I was about to say, this is doubly bad for Ross. Not only is it tough for him to beat any spell getting revealed, but that spell also happens to be Supreme Verdict, which is going to make this game even harder for Ross to win.
Elspeth is up to 7. 3 more soldiers do come into play, and all of a sudden we're threatening an ultimate, and would be a game-winning ultimate here. As Merriam is going to untap, he'll take a draw. Picks up a copy of Nightfell Spectre. That looks like, picks up a copy of Dissolve. Looks like there's a Judge's Familiar maybe over there, as here is Mutavault's going to go after the Elspeth. There will be a block here with just 1 token, it looks like. still being able to present lethal next turn.
Yeah, he needs to keep at least 6 tokens in play here to be able to threaten a lethal ultimate.
Take a look here at the top card from Keranos in just a moment. It is the Detention Sphere. That's going to go upstairs, put Merriam down to 15.
Now, is Dustin willing to risk the Cyclonic Rift?
Oh, he's moving in.
Yeah, it appears so.
There's an Elspeth Emblem. All of these soldiers are now 3/3 flyers. Merriam's going to drop his hand and concede the game. Dustin Mitchell is going to win this match over Ross Merriam. 2-1. Blue-White Red Control gets it done over Mono Blue Devotion.
Very cool. A deck